My name is Vera, and I'm poor. When a golden invitation came to the fanciest restaurant in town, I almost threw it away. People like me don't belong in places like that. But I went anyway. Big mistake. Rich people surrounded me. They called me poor, they laughed at my old dress, they took pictures to shame me. I wanted to disappear. Then the waiter said, "Your table's ready, ma'am." He led me to a secret room where only billionaires eat. Inside, a man was waiting for me. It was my brother Danny, the brother I buried 15 years ago. He wasn't dead. And he owned the restaurant. My name is Vera, and I clean offices at night. Every evening, I put on my old uniform and walk through empty buildings, making everything shine for the people who work there during the day. They never see me. I'm invisible to them, just like I am to most people. My hands are rough and red from the cleaning chemicals. My back hurts from bending over desks and scrubbing floors. My shoes have holes in them that I covered with tape. But this is my life, and I'm grateful to have work. That Tuesday started like any other day. I woke up at noon in my tiny apartment. The walls are thin, so I can hear my neighbors talking and their televisions playing. Mrs. Chen next door was cooking something that smelled wonderful. My stomach growled, reminding me that I only had bread and peanut butter for lunch again. I was getting ready for work when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Then I heard something slide under my door. Mail doesn't usually come this late in the day. I opened the door and looked around, but no one was there. On the floor was a thick envelope. It was cream-colored and felt expensive. My name was written on it in beautiful handwriting, Miss Vera Martinez. I picked it up with shaking hands. No one ever sent me fancy mail. The envelope was heavy and smooth, like nothing I had ever touched before. Inside was a card that took my breath away. It was gold, real gold, I think, and it sparkled in the light from my window. The words were written in elegant letters. "You are cordially invited to dinner at the Golden Crown restaurant. Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. Come as you are. Your presence is requested and expected." I read it 3 times before the words sank in. The Golden Crown restaurant. Everyone in the city knew that name. It was the fanciest, most expensive restaurant in town. Movie stars ate there. Politicians held important meetings there. Rich people celebrated their birthdays there. And someone had invited me. I sat down on my old couch and stared at the invitation. This had to be a mistake. People like me didn't get invited to places like the Golden Crown. I was a cleaning lady who lived in a small apartment and wore secondhand clothes. Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. "Vera, dear, are you okay?" I heard you gasp. I opened the door and showed her the invitation. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my goodness," she said, taking the card carefully. "This is beautiful. Who invited you?" "I don't know. There's no name on it." "How exciting. You must go." I shook my head. "I can't go there, Mrs. Chen. Look at me. Look at my clothes. I don't belong in a place like that." Mrs. Chen looked at me with kind eyes. She was 70 years old and had lived through many hard times. "Vera, someone thought you belonged there. Someone wanted you to come. But what if it's a joke? What if someone is trying to embarrass me? What if it's not a joke? What if someone wants to do something nice for you?" I looked at the invitation again. The gold caught the light and seemed to glow. "I don't have anything nice to wear." "You have your blue dress, the one you wore to your cousin's wedding." "That dress is 5 years old. It's faded and too big for me now." "It's still pretty, and you're still pretty." I felt tears in my eyes. Mrs. Chen was always so kind to me. When I was sick last winter, she brought me soup. When I couldn't afford groceries, she shared her dinner with me. She treated me like family. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Of course you are. But sometimes we have to be brave, even when we're scared." That night at work, I couldn't stop thinking about the invitation. I cleaned the same desk 3 times because I kept getting distracted. The security guard, Mr. Peters, noticed I seemed upset. "You okay tonight, Vera?" he asked. I showed him the invitation. He whistled low. "The Golden Crown? That's some fancy place. Have you ever been there?" "Me? No way. That place is for rich folks." "But hey, if someone invited you, you should go." "You think so?" "I think someone sees something special in you. Maybe it's time you saw it too." When I got home that morning, I put the invitation on my kitchen table and stared at it while I ate my breakfast. The gold seemed to whisper to me, "Come, you belong here. You are wanted." All week, I went back and forth. One minute I was excited. The next minute I was terrified. I tried on my blue dress and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired and thin. My hair was gray at the roots because I couldn't afford to color it. But then I remembered Mrs. Chen's words. Someone wanted you to come. Friday night, I made my decision. I was going to be brave. I was going to that dinner. I had no idea that this one decision would change everything. Saturday came too fast. I woke up feeling sick to my stomach. What was I doing? I was about to walk into the fanciest restaurant in the city wearing a 5-year-old dress and shoes with holes in them. I spent the morning cleaning my small apartment, trying to keep my mind busy. But every time I looked at the golden invitations sitting on my table, my heart started racing. At 3 o'clock, I decided to get ready. I had never taken so long to prepare for anything in my life. First, I took a long bath. I used the last of my good soap, the lavender one I had been saving for a special occasion. The warm water felt wonderful on my tired muscles. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine that I was getting ready for something magical. Then I washed my hair with my best shampoo. I only used it once a month because it was expensive, but tonight felt important enough. I stood in front of my tiny bathroom mirror and tried to do something nice with my hair. It was thin and gray, but I managed to curl it a little with some old rollers I found in a drawer. The blue dress was hanging on my closet door. When I bought it 5 years ago for my sister's wedding, it had been the prettiest thing I owned. Now it looked faded and worn. The color had washed out to a pale blue-gray, and it hung loose on my thin frame. But it was still the nicest thing I had. I put on the dress and looked at myself in my bedroom mirror. I looked like what I was, a tired, poor woman trying to dress up for something beyond her reach. In the bottom of my jewelry box, I found a small pair of earrings. They were fake pearls, but they made me feel a little more elegant. I also found some old lipstick. It was almost empty, but I scraped out enough to color my lips a soft pink. My shoes were the biggest problem. My only nice shoes were black flats with holes near the toes. I had covered the holes with black tape, but you could still see them if you looked closely. I hoped no one would look at my feet. At 5 o'clock, Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. "Let me see you, dear," she said when I opened it. I stood there feeling embarrassed while she looked me over. "You look lovely," she said, but I could see worry in her eyes. "I look poor," I said. "You look like a kind, good woman who deserves a nice evening." She disappeared into her apartment and came back with a small bottle of perfume. "Here, use just a little bit." The perfume smelled like flowers in spring. It made me feel more confident. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." "You're welcome. Now go have a wonderful time." The bus ride to the Golden Crown took 40 minutes. I sat by the window and watched the city change as we drove. The buildings got taller and more beautiful. The cars got newer and shinier. The people walking on the sidewalks wore expensive clothes and looked important. With each mile, I felt more out of place. Other passengers on the bus stared at me. A woman in a business suit looked at my dress and whispered something to her friend. A teenage boy pointed at my taped shoes and laughed. I wanted to get off the bus and go home, but something kept me in my seat. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just stubbornness. The Golden Crown restaurant was even more beautiful than I had imagined. It was a huge building made of white stone with tall windows that sparkled like diamonds. Golden lights lined the front entrance, and beautiful flowers grew in perfect gardens on both sides of the walkway. Expensive cars pulled up to the front door. Men in black suits got out and handed keys to valets. Women in gorgeous dresses stepped carefully in high heels. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine. I stood across the street for 10 minutes, just watching. These people were different from me. They moved with confidence. They laughed easily. They belonged here. I almost turned around and went home. But then I remembered the invitation. Someone had wanted me to come here. Someone had thought I belonged. I took a deep breath and crossed the street. The doorman was tall and wore a fancy uniform with gold buttons. He looked like he should be guarding a palace, not a restaurant. When he saw me walking up the steps, his eyebrows went up in surprise. I could feel my face getting red. My hands were shaking as I reached into my purse for the invitation. Excuse me, I said quietly. I have an invitation. The doorman looked at the golden card, then at me, then back at the card. His mouth opened a little. Please wait here, he said, and disappeared inside. I stood by the beautiful front door, feeling smaller and smaller. Rich people walked past me like I wasn't there. Some glanced at my old dress with confused looks. Others whispered to each other. A man in an expensive suit walked up to the door with his wife. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Excuse me, the man said to me. Are you waiting for someone? I have an invitation to dinner, I said. The woman looked me up and down. Are you sure you're at the right place? My face burned with embarrassment. Yes, I think so. This is a very exclusive restaurant, she said. Perhaps you meant to go somewhere else. Before I could answer, the doorman came back. Behind him was a thin man in a black suit who looked very serious. Ma'am, the serious man said, I'm the manager. May I see your invitation? With trembling hands, I gave him the golden card. He studied it carefully, turning it over and over. His eyebrows went higher and higher. This appears to be authentic, he said, sounding shocked. But I must ask, are you certain you're in the right place? The invitation says the Golden Crown Restaurant. Yes, but he looked at my dress, my shoes, my nervous face. This is very unusual. The rich couple was still standing there, listening to everything. Other people had stopped to watch too. I felt like I was on display. Well, the woman in the expensive dress said, is she allowed in or not? The manager looked confused and worried. He studied the invitation one more time. I suppose, if the invitation is real. He sighed. Please follow me. As we walked through the front door, I heard the woman say to her husband, I can't believe they're letting her in. She'll ruin the whole atmosphere. My stomach twisted with shame, but I kept walking. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The manager led me through the most beautiful room I had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. The tables were covered with white cloths so clean they seemed to glow. Real flowers sat in fancy vases on every table. Everything sparkled and shined. But as we walked through the dining room, I felt every pair of eyes turn to look at me. Conversations stopped. People stared. Some pointed. I heard whispers following us. Who is that woman? Look at her dress. Those shoes have tape on them. What is she doing here? This is embarrassing. My face felt hot. I wanted to run, but my legs kept moving forward. The manager walked fast, like he wanted to get me out of sight as quickly as possible. He led me to a tiny table in the far corner of the restaurant. It was hidden behind a large plant, away from all the other diners. The table was smaller than the others and had no flowers. Someone will be with you shortly, the manager said. Then he hurried away like I had some kind of disease. I sat down and tried to make myself invisible. The chair was uncomfortable and wobbly. From where I sat, I could see the other tables, but they couldn't see me very well. I felt like I was being hidden. A waiter walked past my table 3 times without stopping. Each time, I tried to catch his eye, but he looked right through me. The people at the table next to mine were talking loud enough for me to hear every word. I can't believe they let someone like that in here, said a woman with blonde hair and a diamond necklace. She looks homeless, said the man with her. He wore an expensive suit and a gold watch. It's disgusting, the blonde woman continued. We pay good money to eat at a nice place, and they let in people like that. She probably doesn't even have money to pay for her meal. Someone should call the manager. Each word felt like a slap. I stared down at my hands and tried not to cry. These people didn't even know me, but they hated me just because of how I looked. Finally, a young waiter came to my table. He had slicked back hair and looked annoyed that he had to serve me. What do you want? He asked rudely. I'd like to see a menu, please. He dropped a menu on my table without looking at me. Do you have money to pay for this food? Excuse me, I said, do you have money? Because if you don't, you need to leave right now. His voice was loud enough for other people to hear. I saw heads turning to look at us. Yes, I have money, I whispered. How much money? Enough. Enough for what? Do you know how much food costs here? I opened the menu and almost gasped. The prices were unbelievable. A simple salad costs $30. A piece of fish costs $60. One meal here costs more than I spent on food in a whole month. Well, the waiter said impatiently, I need a minute to decide. Don't take too long. We have real customers waiting. Real customers. Like I wasn't real. Like I didn't matter. The waiter walked away, and I heard him talking to another waiter. Can you believe they're making me serve her? He said. Why did they even let her in? The other waiter replied. I don't know, but she better not try to leave without paying. I sat there holding the menu, but I couldn't read the words through my tears. Everything was blurry. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the menu steady. The blonde woman from the next table stood up and walked over to me. Excuse me, she said in a loud voice. I think there's been a mistake. I looked up at her. She was beautiful and well-dressed, but her eyes were cold. I'm sorry. You don't belong here. This is a restaurant for people with class. People with money. Other diners were turning to watch now. Some were taking out their phones to record what was happening. I have an invitation, I said quietly. An invitation? From who? I don't know. It came in the mail. She laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. Someone is playing a joke on you, honey. They sent you here to embarrass you. I don't think so. Look around. Do you see anyone else dressed like you? I looked around the restaurant. She was right. Every woman was wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. Every man wore perfect suits. I was the only one who looked poor. You're making everyone uncomfortable. The woman continued. You should leave before you embarrass yourself even more. I just want to eat dinner. Not here. Go to McDonald's or somewhere more appropriate. More people were gathering around my table now. I felt surrounded, trapped. A man with a gray beard joined the blonde woman. What's the problem here? This person thinks she belongs in a place like this, the woman said. Well, she obviously doesn't, the man replied. Look at her. Someone should get the manager, said another woman. Someone should call security, added another man. The circle of people around my table was getting bigger. All of them were staring at me like I was some kind of animal in a zoo. Please, I whispered. I just want to eat. You can't afford to eat here, the blonde woman said firmly. You probably don't even have $20 to your name. Poor people shouldn't be allowed in nice places, the gray-bearded man agreed. They bring down the whole atmosphere. It's not fair to the rest of us, said another woman. I felt smaller and smaller. The tears were flowing freely now, but I couldn't stop them. This was worse than anything I had ever experienced. I had been poor my whole life, but no one had ever attacked me like this. No one had ever made me feel so worthless. The young waiter came back to my table, but instead of taking my order, he just stood there watching the scene. Well, the blonde woman said to him, are you going to do something about this? The waiter looked at me with disgust. Ma'am, I think you should leave, but I have an invitation. I don't care what you have. You're disturbing our other customers. The crowd around my table was getting louder. More people were joining them. I heard someone say they were going to post videos of me online. I tried to stand up, but my legs were shaking so badly I almost fell back down. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw the manager walking toward us with a serious look on his face. Behind him was someone else. An older man in a perfect black suit. He looked important, like he had worked at the restaurant for many years. The older man's eyes were kind, but there was something else in his expression, something that looked like recognition. But before he could reach me, the blonde woman got louder and meaner. This has gone on long enough, she announced to everyone around us. Someone needs to do something about this situation. She turned to face me directly, her diamond earrings catching the light from the chandelier above. Look at yourself. You're poor. You don't belong here with decent people. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had been called poor before, but never with such hate. Never with such disgust. She's right, said the gray-bearded man. Poor people shouldn't be allowed in places like this. It brings down the whole atmosphere, added another woman in a fur coat. Someone should call security, said a man in a navy suit. The blonde woman was enjoying the attention. She raised her voice even louder so everyone in the restaurant could hear. This woman is obviously homeless. Look at her clothes. Look at those shoes with tape on them. She probably hasn't had a bath in weeks. I touched my hair self-consciously. I had washed it just hours ago, but now I felt dirty and ashamed. She's probably here to steal something, continued the blonde woman. Or maybe she's begging for food. We should check her purse, suggested the gray-bearded man. Poor people are always trying to get something for free, said another woman. Each word felt like a knife cutting into my heart. I had worked hard my whole life. I had never stolen anything. I had never begged for anything. But these people were talking about me like I was less than human. Please, I whispered, but my voice was so quiet no one heard me. The young waiter who had been rude to me earlier pushed through the crowd. Ma'am, you need to leave now, he said loudly. You're disturbing our customers. But I have an invitation, I said, holding up the golden card with shaking hands. The blonde woman laughed cruelly. That's probably fake. Poor people are always trying to trick their way into places where they don't belong. Let me see that, said the gray-bearded man, grabbing the invitation from my hands. Don't touch that, I said, reaching for it. This does look real, the man admitted, examining the card carefully. Then someone sent it to her as a joke, the blonde woman said. Someone wanted to humiliate her by making her think she belonged here. The crowd around me was getting bigger. I counted at least 15 people now, all staring at me like I was some kind of zoo animal. It's cruel to give poor people false hope, said a woman in a black dress. She probably believed she could actually eat here, laughed another man. Look how she's dressed, said the blonde woman, pointing at my faded blue dress. She probably thinks that's fancy. Those shoes are held together with tape, someone else pointed out. And that purse looks like it came from a thrift store, added another voice. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to sink into the floor and never come back up. These people were picking apart everything about me, finding every flaw, every sign of my poverty. She doesn't even have proper jewelry, the blonde woman continued. Those earrings are obviously fake. I reached up to touch the small pearl earrings I had put on so carefully. They were fake, but they had made me feel pretty for a few hours. Someone should take a picture, said a young man with his phone already out. This is hilarious. No, please don't, I begged. Why not? You came here knowing you didn't belong. Now everyone can see what happens when poor people try to act above their station. The flash from his phone camera made me blink. I heard several other cameras clicking. This is going straight to social media, someone said. The whole city will see this, laughed another person. I felt sick to my stomach. Not only were they humiliating me here, but they were going to share it with the whole world. Poor people need to learn their place, the gray-bearded man said firmly. They can't just waltz into expensive places and expect to be treated like they belong. Exactly, agreed the blonde woman. There are rules in society. There are places for people like her, and places for people like us. She probably lives in some horrible apartment, said a woman in red. Or maybe she's homeless, suggested another man. Look at how thin she is. She probably can't afford to eat regularly. They were right about that. Some days I only ate one meal because I couldn't afford more. But hearing them say it out loud made me feel so ashamed. This is what happens when society doesn't take care of its problems. The blonde woman continued. Poor people start thinking they can go anywhere and do anything. Someone should teach her a lesson, said the gray-bearded man. I think we already are, the blonde woman replied with a mean smile. The manager finally pushed through the crowd. He looked nervous and uncomfortable. What's going on here? He asked. We're asking you to remove this person, the blonde woman said firmly. She doesn't belong here, and she's ruining our evening. We pay good money to eat at this restaurant, added the gray-bearded man. We shouldn't have to look at this. The manager looked at me sitting there crying, then at the angry crowd surrounding me. Please, I whispered to him. I just want to eat dinner. Can you afford to eat here? He asked bluntly. I looked at the menu still sitting on my table. The cheapest thing was a soup that cost $25. I had $40 in my purse. It was all the money I had in the world until my next paycheck. I have some money, I said quietly. How much? The manager demanded. $40, the crowd laughed. The blonde woman laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. $40? She gasped. You can't even buy an appetizer here for $40. This is ridiculous, the manager said. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. But the invitation? I don't care about any invitation. You clearly don't belong here. That's when the older waiter finally reached us. He had been walking slowly through the crowd, his kind eyes taking in everything that was happening. What seems to be the problem here? He asked, in a calm, strong voice. We're removing this person. the manager said quickly. She can't afford to eat here. The older waiter looked at me, then at the angry crowd, then back at me. There was something in his eyes that I couldn't understand. Something that looked almost like sadness. I see, he said quietly. And what exactly has this lady done wrong? She's poor, the blonde woman said, like that explained everything. She doesn't belong here, added the gray-bearded man. She's disturbing the other customers, the manager said. The older waiter nodded slowly. I understand. May I see her invitation, please? The gray-bearded man handed him the golden card. The older waiter examined it carefully, and his eyes went very wide. Oh my, he whispered. Oh my goodness. He looked at me again, then at the invitation, then back at me. Ma'am, he said to me in a voice full of respect, I am so very sorry for how you've been treated tonight. Everyone looked confused. Why was he apologizing to me? The older waiter stood up, very straight, and looked around at all the cruel faces surrounding my table. Your table is ready, he said to me clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. The blonde woman laughed. What table? She's already sitting at a table. But the older waiter wasn't looking at my small corner table. He was looking toward the back of the restaurant, toward a door I had never noticed before. A door marked private dining. Everyone in the crowd turned to look where the older waiter was pointing. The private dining room was legendary at the Golden Crown. Only the most important people in the city ate there. Presidents, movie stars, billionaires. The blonde woman laughed so hard she snorted. That's impossible. She can't go in there. There must be some mistake, said the gray-bearded man. But the older waiter wasn't laughing. His face was serious and respectful as he looked at me. Ma'am, please follow me, he said gently. I stood up on shaky legs. My whole body was trembling from the awful things these people had said to me. Are you sure? I'm absolutely sure. The crowd around me looked confused and angry. The blonde woman stepped in front of me. This is ridiculous, she said. You can't possibly think she belongs in the private dining room. The older waiter looked at her with cold eyes. Ma'am, I've been working at this restaurant for 35 years. I know exactly who belongs in that room. But look at her, the woman protested, pointing at my old dress and taped shoes. I am looking at her, the older waiter replied calmly, and I see a lady who deserves our respect and our best service. The manager looked panicked. Robert, what are you doing? That room is reserved for VIPs only. I know what I'm doing, Robert said firmly. This lady has a very special invitation. He took the golden card from the gray-bearded man and held it up for everyone to see. Do any of you recognize this invitation? He asked. They all shook their heads. This is not just any invitation. This is a personal invitation from the owner of this restaurant. Everyone gasped. The owner of the Golden Crown never gave personal invitations. No one had ever seen the owner. Some people said he didn't even exist. That's impossible, the manager stammered. Is it? Robert asked. He looked at the invitation again, then at me. Ma'am, may I ask your full name? Vera Martinez, I whispered. Robert's eyes went wide. He stared at me like he had seen a ghost. Vera Martinez, he repeated slowly. Of course. I should have recognized you immediately. Recognized me? I've never been here before. No, but I've been looking at your picture for 15 years. My heart stopped. My picture. The owner has a photograph on his desk. A young woman with kind eyes and a beautiful smile. He told me that if anyone named Vera Martinez ever came to this restaurant, I should treat her like the most important person in the world. I felt dizzy. I don't understand. You will, Robert said with a mysterious smile. Please, follow me to your table. The crowd was speechless. The blonde woman's mouth was hanging open. The gray-bearded man looked like he might faint. Robert began walking toward the private dining room. I followed him, my legs still shaking. Wait, the blonde woman called out. Who is she? How do you know her? Robert turned around and looked at all the cruel people who had surrounded my table. This lady, he said clearly, is someone very special to someone very important. Someone who has been searching for her for a very long time. Searching for her? The manager asked. For 15 years, Robert confirmed. And tonight, finally, they will be reunited. As we walked through the restaurant, every person we passed turned to stare. Conversations stopped. Waiters paused in the middle of serving food. Everyone wanted to know who I was and why I was being taken to the private dining room. I felt like I was walking through a dream. This couldn't be real. People like me didn't get taken to private dining rooms. People like me didn't have pictures on important people's desks. The private dining room was behind a heavy wooden door. Robert opened it with a special key that hung from a chain around his neck. Inside, it was the most beautiful room I had ever seen. The table was set for 2 people with golden plates and crystal glasses that sparkled like diamonds. Candles flickered softly on the table. Fresh roses filled the room with the sweetest smell. "Please, sit wherever you'd like," Robert said kindly. I sat down in one of the chairs. It was so comfortable, covered in soft red velvet. I had never sat in anything so nice. "Would you like some water while you wait?" Robert asked. "Wait for what?" "For your dinner companion, of course." "I don't have a dinner companion. I came alone." Robert smiled mysteriously. "You won't be alone for long." He poured sparkling water into my crystal glass. It tasted clean and fresh, like water from a mountain stream. "Ma'am, may I tell you something?" Robert asked. "Of course. In my 35 years working here, I've served presidents and kings. I've served famous actors and rich businessmen, but I've never been more honored to serve anyone than I am to serve you tonight." "I don't understand why. I am nobody special." "That's where you're wrong," Robert said gently. "You see, 20 years ago, a young man came to this restaurant. He was dirty and poor, wearing torn clothes and broken shoes. He asked for a job washing dishes. I listened carefully, wondering why he was telling me this story. Everyone laughed at him," Robert continued. "The manager said he was too low class to work here. The other employees said he would steal from us. What happened to him? I was younger then, just a regular waiter. But I saw something in that young man's eyes. Determination, intelligence, hope. So I convinced the manager to give him a chance." Robert refilled my water glass. "That young man worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen. He washed dishes for 16 hours a day. He cleaned bathrooms, he mopped floors, and he watched. He learned. He studied how the restaurant worked." "Did he become a waiter too?" "Oh, much more than that," Robert said with a smile. "He saved every penny he earned. He went to night school. He learned about business and cooking and management." "What happened to him?" "He worked his way up, from dishwasher to cook to assistant manager. And then one day, he made the owner an offer he couldn't refuse." "What kind of offer?" "He offered to buy the restaurant." My mouth fell open. "He bought this place?" "He bought this restaurant, and the building, and 2 other restaurants in the city. That poor young man with torn clothes became very, very successful." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Where is he now?" "He's the owner of the Golden Crown. He's been the owner for 10 years. But I thought no one ever saw the owner. He's usually very private, but tonight is different." "Why?" Robert checked his watch. "Because tonight, he's finally found what he's been looking for all these years." "What's that?" "His family." Just then, we heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Robert's face lit up with joy. "Perfect timing," he said. The door opened slowly, and a man walked in. He was about 50 years old, wearing an expensive suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was gray at the temples, and he had kind but tired eyes. He looked at me sitting at the beautiful table, and his face went completely white. "Vera," he whispered, his voice breaking. I stared at him. There was something familiar about his face, but I couldn't place him. He looked like someone I might have known long ago, but older now. Different. "Do I know you?" I asked softly. The man's eyes filled with tears. "You don't recognize me, do you?" "I'm sorry, but no. It's okay," he said, his voice barely audible. "It's been 15 years. I've changed a lot. 15 years. That number hit me like lightning. 15 years? I repeated. The man nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Vera, it's me. It's your little brother." My world stopped spinning. "Danny?" I whispered. But that was impossible. Danny was dead. I stared at the man standing in front of me. He had kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. He was wearing an expensive suit and looked successful and important. But Danny was dead. I had been to his funeral. I had cried over his coffin. I had mourned him for 15 years. "You're not Danny," I whispered. "Danny died in a car accident 15 years ago." The man's face crumpled with pain. "No, Vera, I didn't die. I was hurt very badly, but I didn't die." I shook my head. "The police told me you were dead. The hospital told me you were dead. I saw your death certificate. There was a terrible mistake," he said, stepping closer to me. "The worst kind of mistake possible." "What kind of mistake?" Danny sat down in the chair across from me. His hands were shaking as much as mine were. "When they brought me to the hospital after the accident, I didn't have any identification with me. My wallet had fallen out of my pocket when the car crashed. I was unconscious for 6 weeks. I listened, but I couldn't believe what I was hearing. By the time I woke up and could tell them who I was, they had already told you I was dead. There had been another young man who died in a different accident the same night. Somehow, the hospital mixed up our identities. But I went to your funeral. I saw your coffin. It was empty, Vera. They buried an empty coffin because they thought they had to. The mistake was so big, so terrible, that it was easier for everyone to let people believe I was dead than to admit what had happened. Tears were streaming down my face. This can't be real. You're not my brother. I know this is hard to believe, but look at me. Really look at me. Don't you see anything familiar? I studied his face more carefully. The shape of his nose, the way he smiled, the scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike as a child. You have a scar, I whispered, from when I was 8 years old. I was trying to impress you by riding my bike with no hands. I crashed into Mrs. Peterson's fence. Remember? I did remember. Danny had been showing off, and I had bandaged his chin and held him while he cried. Anyone could know that story, I said, but my voice was getting weaker. What about the Sunday pancakes? Danny asked softly. You used to make them in the shape of Mickey Mouse. You said it was the only way to get me to eat breakfast. My heart skipped a beat. I had never told anyone about the Mickey Mouse pancakes. It was our secret, just between Danny and me. Or what about the lullaby you used to sing when I had nightmares? About the little bird who flew too far from home but always found his way back. I started crying harder. Only Danny would know about that song. I had made it up just for him when our parents died and he was scared to sleep alone. How is this possible? I whispered. I don't know, Danny said, reaching across the table to take my hands. All I know is that I've been looking for you for 15 years. Every day, I hired people to try to find you. I never gave up hope. But why couldn't you find me? After they told you I was dead, you moved away. You changed your name back to your maiden name. You disappeared completely. I had no idea where you had gone or what had happened to you. I pulled my hands away from his. I couldn't stay in our old apartment. Everything reminded me of you. I was so sad, so lost. I thought I had no family left in the world. I'm so sorry, Vera. I'm so sorry for all the pain you've been through. I mourned you every day for 15 years. I visited your grave every year on your birthday. I talked to your headstone like you could hear me. Danny was crying now too. I know. I know how much you must have hurt. If I could have prevented that pain, I would have done anything. How did you find me now? Last week, one of my private detectives finally tracked you down. He found your current address and told me about your life, about your job, about how you've been struggling. I looked down at my old dress and felt ashamed again. You know I'm poor. I know you're strong. I know you're brave. I know you survived 15 years thinking your only family was dead. I'm not strong. Look at what happened tonight. Those people were so cruel to me and I just sat there and took it. You came here, even though you were scared. You walked into a place where you knew you didn't fit in because someone had invited you. That takes courage. Robert, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. Your brother is right, he said gently. In all my years working here, I've never seen anyone handle cruelty with such grace. Grace? I laughed bitterly. I was crying. I was humiliated. You were being attacked by a group of cruel people, but you never said anything mean back to them. You never tried to hurt them the way they were hurting you. That's grace. I looked at Danny again. He was older now, successful looking, but his eyes were the same. Kind and gentle. just like when he was a little boy. Is it really you? I whispered. It's really me, Vera, your little brother who used to be afraid of thunder, who you taught to ride a bike, who you took care of when Mom and Dad died. I was only 22 when they died. I didn't know how to take care of a 15-year-old boy. You were the best sister anyone could ask for. You worked 3 jobs to keep us together. You made sure I stayed in school. You sacrificed everything for me. I failed you. I couldn't protect you from that accident. Vera, the accident wasn't your fault, and everything that happened after wasn't your fault either. But if I had been a better sister— Stop, Danny said firmly. You were perfect. You were everything to me. Do you know what kept me going all these years? The memory of your love, the memory of how you took care of me. I studied his face again, looking for proof that this was real, that my little brother was really sitting across from me, alive and well. What happened after the accident? How did you end up owning this restaurant? Danny's expression grew serious. When I finally got out of the hospital, I had nothing, no family that I knew of, no money, no place to live. I was all alone in the world. Where did you go? I lived on the streets for a while. I was angry and hurt and confused. I didn't understand why everyone thought I was dead. I didn't know how to find you. That must have been so hard. It was, but then I got a job washing dishes at a restaurant downtown. I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was determined to make something of myself. I wanted to prove that I was worth something. And you did. Look at you now. But none of it mattered without you, Vera. All the money, all the success, all the restaurants. None of it meant anything because I didn't have my family. I felt a warmth spreading through my chest, a feeling I hadn't felt in 15 years. You really own this place? I own 4 restaurants now, and a hotel. But I would trade it all just to have my sister back. I'm here, I said softly. Are you? Are you really here with me? I reached across the table and touched his hand. It was warm and real and familiar. I'm here, Danny. He smiled through his tears. I've missed you so much. I've missed you too, every single day. We sat there holding hands across the beautiful table, both crying happy tears. My little brother was alive. My family wasn't gone after all. But then I remembered something. Danny, what about those people who were so cruel to me? They're still out there in the restaurant. Danny's expression changed. The kindness in his eyes was replaced by something harder. Don't worry about them, he said quietly. They're about to learn a very important lesson. Danny stood up and walked to a phone on the wall. He pressed a button and spoke into it. Robert, please bring them to the private dining room, all of them. Bring who? I asked, feeling nervous. The people who were cruel to you tonight, the ones who called you poor and said you didn't belong here. My stomach twisted. Danny, no, I don't want to see them again. They were so mean to me. I know they were. That's exactly why they need to see this. See what? They need to see who you really are. They need to understand what they did. Within minutes, Robert opened the door and led in a group of people. The blonde woman with the diamond necklace, her husband, the gray-bearded man, the young waiter who had been rude to me, the nervous manager, all the people who had surrounded my table and said horrible things. They looked confused and worried. The blonde woman was especially upset. What's going on? She demanded. Why were we brought back here? Danny stood at the head of the beautiful table, looking at each of them. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. You're here because I wanted to meet you personally. Who are you? The manager asked, looking scared. I'm Daniel Martinez. I own this restaurant. Everyone's face went white. The manager looked like he might fall over. Mr. Martinez? The manager stammered. I had no idea you were here tonight. Obviously, Danny said in a voice like ice. Tell me, what happened in my restaurant tonight? The manager looked around nervously. Nothing unusual, sir. Just a normal evening. Really? Because I heard that some customers were cruel to another customer. I heard that a woman was surrounded and insulted and told she didn't belong here. The blonde woman stepped forward. She still looked proud and angry. That woman didn't belong here. She was poor. She was bringing down the whole atmosphere. Danny walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. This woman is my sister. The silence in the room was complete. No one moved. No one even breathed. Your sister, the blonde woman whispered. My sister, who I've been searching for 15 years. My sister, who I love more than anything in this world. My sister, who you called poor and worthless and told she didn't belong here. The young waiter looked terrified. Sir, I didn't know. You didn't know what? Danny's voice got louder. That she was my sister? Would that have made a difference? Would you have treated her better if you knew she was related to someone important? No one answered. Let me ask you all something, Danny continued. What makes a person worthy of respect? Is it their clothes, their money, their car? The blonde woman tried to speak. Well, no, Danny said firmly. Let me tell you what makes a person worthy of respect. Character, kindness, how they treat others, especially people who can't help them. He looked at each person in the room. Tonight you all failed that test completely. The manager was sweating. Mr. Martinez, please, I can explain. Explain what? That you seated my sister in a corner like she was something to hide. That you allowed your customers to surround her and attack her. That your waiter asked her if she could afford to eat here. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. There it is again. You didn't know. But here's what you should know. Every person who walks through that door deserves to be treated with dignity. Rich or poor. Famous or unknown. Well-dressed or not. Danny turned to the blonde woman. You said poor people shouldn't be allowed in nice places. You said they bring down the atmosphere. The woman nodded weakly. Well, I have news for you. I was once poor. I lived on the streets. I washed dishes for a living. According to you, I didn't belong in nice places either. But you're successful now. And that makes me a better person, more worthy of respect. She had no answer. Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. Success doesn't give you the right to look down on people. Class isn't about how much money you have. It's about how you treat people who have less than you. Danny looked at the young waiter. You told my sister she was disturbing the real customers. You made her feel like she wasn't even human. The waiter's face was red with shame. Please, sir, I need this job. I have bills to pay. You should have thought of that before you decided to humiliate my sister. Danny turned to the manager. And you're supposed to make sure every guest feels welcome in my restaurant. Instead, you let a group of bullies attack a woman who had done nothing wrong. Sir, please. I have a family to support. My sister is my family. And you failed to protect her. The blonde woman was getting angry again. You can't blame us for not knowing who she was. I'm not blaming you for not knowing who she was, Danny said calmly. I'm blaming you for how you treated her. You didn't need to know she was my sister to treat her with basic human decency. But she looked so poor. So what? Does that give you the right to be cruel? Does that make her less of a person? The woman had no answer. You know what the saddest part is? Danny continued. My sister is one of the kindest people I've ever known. She worked 3 jobs to take care of me when our parents died. She sacrificed everything to make sure I had food and clothes and a place to live. She has more class in her little finger than all of you put together. I felt tears in my eyes. Danny was defending me like he used to when we were kids. And how did you treat her? You laughed at her. You called her names. You made her cry. You tried to humiliate her in front of a room full of people. Danny's voice got stronger. You took pictures of her to post on social media. You wanted to share her pain with the whole world for your entertainment. The young man who had taken the pictures looked down at his shoes. Well, here's what's going to happen, Danny said. First, you're going to delete those pictures. All of them. Right now. The young man quickly pulled out his phone and started deleting. Second, Danny continued, you're all banned from this restaurant. Forever. You can't do that, the blonde woman protested. I own this restaurant. I can do whatever I want. We spend a lot of money here. I don't want your money. I don't want customers who think money gives them the right to be cruel to other people. Danny looked at the young waiter. You're fired. Clean out your locker and leave. The waiter's eyes filled with tears. Please, sir. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. You're right. You'll never do it again here. Danny turned to the manager. You're fired too. Sir, please. I have children. I need this job. You should have thought about that before you allowed my sister to be attacked in my restaurant. The manager started crying. Please give me another chance. Did you give my sister a chance? Did you stand up for her when she was being bullied? Did you protect her? The manager shook his head. Then why should I give you a chance? Robert, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. Mr. Martinez, if I may. Of course, Robert. I think these people have learned their lesson. Perhaps mercy would be more powerful than punishment. Danny looked at his sister. What do you think, Vera? Should I give them another chance? Everyone in the room turned to look at me. The same people who had been so cruel just an hour ago were now waiting for me to decide their fate. I thought about how they had made me feel, how small and worthless and ashamed. I thought about the tears and the humiliation and the pain, but I also thought about Danny's words, about kindness, about treating people with dignity. I think, I said quietly, that everyone deserves a second chance, but only if they really understand what they did wrong. The blonde woman stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said. And for the first time that night, she sounded sincere. I was wrong to treat you that way. I was cruel and snobbish and mean. I'm sorry too, said the gray-bearded man. I should have stood up for you, instead of joining in. One by one, they all apologized. Some seemed to really mean it. Others were just scared of losing their jobs or being banned from the restaurant. But Danny wasn't satisfied with just apologies. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're all going to volunteer at the homeless shelter downtown. 20 hours each. You're going to serve food to people who are poor and hungry. You're going to look them in the eye and treat them with respect. And if we don't? The blonde woman asked. Then you're banned forever. And I'll make sure every restaurant owner in the city knows what kind of people you are. They all nodded quickly. Good, Danny said. Now get out of my restaurant. All of you. As they filed out of the room, the blonde woman stopped at the door. Ma'am, she said to me, I really am sorry. You didn't deserve what we did to you. After they left, Danny sat back down next to me. How do you feel? He asked. Better, I said, but also sad. Sad? Sad that people can be so cruel to each other. Sad that it took them finding out who you were to realize they should treat me with respect. Danny nodded. I know. But maybe they learned something tonight. Maybe they'll think twice before they judge someone by their appearance. Maybe. Are you ready for dinner? Danny asked with a smile. Yes, I said. I'm starving. And for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't eating alone. Danny called Robert back into the room. Please bring us the chef's special menu and make sure we get the best of everything. Of course, Mr. Martinez. It will be my pleasure. As Robert left to arrange our dinner, Danny and I sat across from each other, still hardly believing this was real. I have so many questions, I said, wiping my happy tears with the beautiful cloth napkin. Ask me anything, Danny replied. We have all the time in the world now. How did you survive those first years on the streets? It must have been so scary. Danny's face grew serious. It was the hardest time of my life. I was angry at everyone, at the hospital for making the mistake, at the police for not looking harder, at you for believing I was dead and disappearing. You were angry at me. For a while. Yes. But then I realized it wasn't your fault. You were grieving. You had no reason to doubt what the authorities told you. Robert returned with 2 other waiters, carrying silver trays covered with beautiful food. There was tender beef that melted in my mouth, fresh vegetables that tasted like they came from a garden, and bread so soft and warm it was like eating a cloud. This is the most delicious food I've ever eaten, I said between bites. I'm glad you like it. I wanted your first meal back in my life to be perfect. As we ate, Danny told me about his journey from being homeless to owning restaurants. He talked about the kind man named Pete, who had helped him when he was hurt. About the first restaurant where he washed dishes and learned about the business. About going to night school and studying until his eyes hurt. What kept you going? I asked. What made you work so hard? You, he said simply. Every time I wanted to give up, I thought about finding you again. I thought about the day when I could take care of you the way you took care of me. I started crying again. I missed you so much, Danny. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Sunday when I used to make those Mickey Mouse pancakes. I would set a place for you at my little table and pretend you were there. I did the same thing, Danny said softly. Every restaurant I opened, I would save the best table and imagine you sitting there with me. We talked and ate and laughed and cried for 2 hours. Danny told me about his businesses, his employees, his life. I told him about my job cleaning offices, about Mrs. Chen, about the small apartment where I lived. Vera, I want you to know something, Danny said as we finished our dessert. You never have to worry about money again. You never have to clean offices at night or eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. What do you mean? I want to take care of you now. I want you to come work with me. I almost choked on my chocolate cake. Work with you? Danny, I don't know anything about running restaurants. You know about hard work. You know about treating people fairly. You know about kindness. Those are the most important things in this business. But I'm not smart enough. I never went to college. Neither did I when I started. We'll learn together. I'll teach you everything I know. I looked around the beautiful private dining room. Could this really be my life? Could I really go from being a poor cleaning lady to helping run fancy restaurants? I'm scared, I admitted. I'm scared too, Danny said. I'm scared this is all a dream and I'll wake up tomorrow still searching for you. What if I'm not good at it? What if I embarrass you? Danny reached across the table and took my hands. Vera, do you remember what you used to tell me when I was afraid to try something new? I thought for a moment. I used to say that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing, even when you are scared. Exactly. So will you be brave with me? Will you try? I looked at my little brother, who had grown up to be such a successful, kind man. He was offering me a chance at a completely new life. A life where I wouldn't have to worry about paying rent or buying food. A life where I would have family again. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll try. Danny's face lit up with the biggest smile I had ever seen. Really? Really? But I have one condition. Anything. I want to keep cleaning. Danny looked confused. Why would you want to keep cleaning? Because I never want to forget where I came from. I never want to become like those people who were cruel to me tonight. I want to remember what it feels like to be looked down on, so I never do that to anyone else. Danny's eyes filled with pride. That's exactly why you're going to be perfect at this job. There's something else I want to do too. What's that? I want to help other people who are struggling. People like I was. People who feel invisible and forgotten. How? Maybe we could have special dinners for people who can't usually afford to eat in nice places. Maybe we could hire people who are homeless and give them a chance, like Robert gave you. Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then his face broke into another huge smile. Vera, that's brilliant. We could start a program. Once a month, we'll invite people from the homeless shelter to have dinner here. We'll treat them like the most important customers in the world. And we could train them for jobs too. Teach them skills so they can get back on their feet. Yes, we'll call it the Second Chance Program. As we planned together, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope, purpose, joy. Danny, can I ask you something else? Of course. Why did you send the invitation the way you did? Why didn't you just come to my apartment? Danny grinned. Because I wanted our reunion to be special. I wanted to give you a night you would never forget. Well, you definitely did that. And I wanted to see what kind of person you had become. I knew that if you came to this dinner, even though you were scared and knew you might not fit in, it would prove you were still the brave sister I remembered. I almost didn't come, but you did. And that told me everything I needed to know about who you are. What did it tell you? That 15 years of hardship hadn't broken your spirit. That you were still the kind, brave woman who raised me. That you were still my sister. Robert came back into the room with a bottle of champagne. Mr. Martinez, I thought you might like to celebrate. Perfect timing, Robert. As Robert poured the champagne into crystal glasses, I thought about how much my life had changed in just one evening. This morning, I had been a lonely cleaning lady with no family and barely enough money to survive. Tonight, I was sitting in the most beautiful restaurant in the city with my brother, who I thought was dead. I want to make a toast, Danny said, raising his glass. To what? To second chances, to never giving up hope. To the golden invitation that brought us back together. We clinked our glasses, and the sound rang out like bells. And to family, I added. To family, Danny agreed. As we sipped our champagne, I looked at the golden invitation sitting on the table between us. Such a simple thing, but it had changed everything. You know what the best part of tonight was? I asked. What? Not the fancy food, or the beautiful room, or even getting revenge on those mean people. Then what? Finding out I'm not alone anymore? Finding out that someone loves me and has been looking for me all this time. Danny's eyes filled with tears again. You're never going to be alone again, Vera. I promise you that. And you're never going to lose me again. I promise you that too. We sat there in the candlelight, two people who had found each other after 15 years of being lost. Outside, the city was full of people eating dinner in restaurants, but none of them were as happy as we were. Are you ready to start our new life together? Danny asked. I'm ready. And I was. For the first time in 15 years, I was ready for anything. The waiter had been right when he said, "Your table is ready, ma'am." He wasn't just talking about a place to eat dinner. He was talking about my place in the world. My seat at the table of life. I had spent 15 years thinking I didn't belong anywhere. Tonight, I learned that I belonged exactly where I was supposed to be. With my family. That's the end of Vera's amazing story. Sometimes the people who hurt us when we're down are the same ones who bow down when we're up. I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that everyone deserves kindness, please hit that like button. It really helps spread these messages to more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this every week that prove kindness always wins in the end. Speaking of kindness, there's another incredible story waiting for you right now. Click on the video appearing on your screen to watch what happens when a homeless man walks into a fancy store. Trust me, you won't believe the twist. Thanks for listening. And remember, you never know someone's whole story, so always choose kindness.